Hello, everybody. This is Hope, and welcome to the beginning of the future of this channel's progress in terms of it's been like 13 months, I believe, with no content, and a couple of updates saying content will come. But however, that day is here. No longer shall I falter. Content will be coming regularly. Because, I actually do enjoy this kind of stuff. But yes, you may be looking at your screen wondering what the hell it is that I'm playing. But today, I'm playing Witch on the Holy Night, a Kinoku Nasu game. Which, it's another Nasuverse game. How could I not do this? So, my friend gifted me this game and wanted me to play it and tell him my thoughts because he played it and absolutely fucking loved it. He's also the guy that helped me get into Fate, absolute legend. And I started playing the game. I played the first 5 minutes of the game, and something just kind of like sparked within me. Like it just kind of came as if like I just fucking Titan shifted. I just had this sudden urge to record. I had to, and I'm happy to. I've currently read the first 5 minutes of this VN. I don't want to fake that reaction. I've seen up to the point where all the glitchy stuff happens. So if you're new to this series, welcome. I hope you could enjoy Witch on the Holy Night with me. And if you're not new, then I'm just happy to have you here with me. And for everybody who's waited for such a long time, I'm so grateful for your patience and care, and all the comments that people still leave to this day really do touch me. Like, it's just so kind. I really appreciate it. But I want to make some content for you guys. Not only just for you guys, but for me, because I enjoy spreading my thoughts and my reactions to stuff that I love, which is stories. Well, regardless of that, let's go ahead and begin. Because the first 5 minutes of this game absolutely hooked me. Alright. Witch on the Holy Night. Let's freaking go! It was a winter's day 8 years ago. That solemn morning when she understood the value of life for the very first time. I do enjoy how these first two lines really take effect right away into the story here. I think I gotta turn down the game audio just a little bit. Okay, I think that's a bit better. Now my voice is a little bit louder than the game audio. It should be good. Also, I really like this, like, almost childlike, Crayola drawings of this background. Her home was nestled on the side of a mountain. Around it was nothing but inhospitable wilderness. She had no neighbors or childhood friends to speak of. Things like traveling to school or playing outside were no more trouble than they ought to be. Indeed, with its pure water and bright stars, it was a place rich with memories, both frustrating and halcyon. That was only during summer, though. Winters in those mountains were extremely frigid, each morning more severe than the last. Her father would drive her to the train station. After waiting 10 minutes for the engine to warm up and the iced-over windows to clear, her father would savor his morning coffee, leaving her to venture outside and rev the engine. Out the front door she would go, traversing the garden with icy breath until she reached that old sedan. As always, she inserted the key, then started the ignition. The engine rumbled to life. Once more, I must say that this piano piece is gorgeous. It feels so classical, it almost feels like it could be Debussy. Just as she proudly finished that humble task he'd done so many times before, a shrill scream pierced the air. She knew, even though it wasn't human, that the feeble sound was a cry of agony. A few moments passed. Her father came out and opened the hood of the car. Creaking fan belts. A monstrous-looking engine. See, this is really surprising to me. I did not expect to begin a game with something so savage as this. But it is telling a story of life itself. It's not just edgy, which I like, but it immediately draws the reader in Because, like, what sane person doesn't have a heart when it comes to seeing fucking dead cats? And something that didn't belong. There was a cat, a mother by the looks of it, and her 2 kittens. The 3 cats had been huddling for warmth in the engine's compartment. The mother cat was missing its head. One of the kittens had been mangled beyond recognition by the engine belts and surely died instantly. The other kitten, its face half covered in blood, panted faintly. It desperately clung to its mother, or rather, the chunk of meat that had been its mother, with the last bit of life it could muster. So far, the dialogue definitely feels very Nasu-esque. It has the same flavor. Her father lamented their plight. The previous night had been especially cold. After he had returned home yesterday, the cats must have snuck under the hood, drawn by the warmth of the engine. They had slept next to the engine, and awoken to a storm of spinning belts. Cars in the 80s were not sealed particularly well, so this was not unheard of. I love the framing of having the main character. I don't even know if this is the main character. The character's name blank. It kind of gives off that Emiya vibe where we just have that mystery. Her father's voice seemed distant. She could only make out a small tuft of the kitten's gray fur. The rest of it was caked in the blood of its mother and brother. I can see its skull. The fragile life of a speckled kitten, trembling and possibly blind, had continued to nuzzle against its dead mother's chest. She took the kitten into her arms and ran deep into the mountains to her grandfather's house. Was it because she was overcome with regret? Or was it the shock of grief? Years later, she still wasn't sure. Fighting back the welling tears, she burst into her grandfather's workshop. Her grandfather was a magician who could do anything. She had never seen magic, so she knew that magic was a fantasy straight out of fairy tales. But so was her grandfather. She had to find him. He was the only one who could help. And again, my first thought was that this was Zoken. Like, the voice just frickin' reminded me of his ass. The cave-dwelling magician said indifferently, "This kitten needs our help," she pleaded. Whether it was a simple task, or Herculean labor, her grandfather would not say. He simply granted the girl's childish wish like a machine. The girl said. Before she knew it, however, she was holding a tiny corpse in her hands. Its fur was cold. The warmth of life had left its body, and the tears she had fought so hard to hold back poured from her eyes. Regret spread through her chest like an endless gray sky. Her mind struggled to come to grips with what had just occurred. The last 10 minutes were a total blank. Who she met, what she had known, it was all as if it never happened. The only thing she was sure of was that life, once extinguished, can never return. That day, it was her mistake that gave birth to me. Indeed, whatever occurred that day, it was a day of nostalgia and longing. This is the fairy tale of 8 years ago. The day they first met, that no magic can ever bring back. And that is where I stopped. So from now on, it's completely new. I have no idea what's going to happen. Let's begin our journey. And for all you wondering, no, Hollow Ataraxia and Extra aren't canceled or anything. I'm going to make those too, don't worry. Oh, I like the film reel kind of aesthetic there. Arrogant, greedy, and able only to destroy, I must be a wolf. I don't have regrets. There's no looking back. If my pride has left you behind, my sincere condolences. But at any rate, I suppose it's my fate to die at the hands of Little Red Riding Hood. Strange one. Seems to be a lot of talk about fairy tales in this. Oh, that's a gorgeous CG. Oh, is that Johann Liebert in the background? It was a quiet morning. From her bed, she could see the sky was an ashen watercolor gray. The thermometer displayed a 43 degrees Fahrenheit, a rather unforgiving temperature for November. It's actually not that bad. I'm surprised that the translators changed this to Fahrenheit. Interesting. Her stomach woke her up with a growl, pathetically reminding her that she had completely missed breakfast. Mood as fuck. But lazy mornings like today were for her a blessing. It was already well past 8 in the morning. On any ordinary weekday, Tardines would be... Tardines! Oh my god! Tardiness would be unavoidable, but today, classes were cancelled in commemoration of the school's anniversary. Gratefully, she had every intention of taking it easy for the first time in ages. Outside the window was a gloomy gray, and it reminded her more of evening than morning. It wasn't a pleasant morning by any stretch of the imagination, but having been up all night until just 3 hours ago, she couldn't care less about the weather outside. I wonder what she was doing up all night. All she cared about was more sleep. I feel that. As long as she could spend her morning in bed, what was happening outside was of no concern to her. So is she the wolf? She shut the curtains, then closed her eyes and tried to let sleep reclaim her. Blissful slumber found her soon enough. Her consciousness faded. However, her simple request would be mercilessly refused. Oh no! A faint but shrill sound lingered in her ears. It was the unmistakable ring of a telephone. Much to her chagrin, her eyes popped open out of habit. The telephone was situated in the foyer on the first floor. Answering it and walking down a 30-foot corridor and going down a flight of stairs. In her sleep-deprived state, that distance seemed somewhere between incredibly far and astronomically far. The phone's incessant ringing continued. She knew the caller would eventually give up if she ignored it, but she chose to fight the urge. Alice? Okay, another fairy tale name. She thought her housemate would get it, but she soon had to abandon all hope. Ye who enter here. The realization struck that her housemate did not have the day off from school and was likely in class at her prestigious little hilltop academy. The call proved incredibly persistent. That persistence made the volume of the ringing seem even louder. She was left with no choice but to get up, throw a top on, and leave the room. She rubbed her hands together to warm her numb fingers. The mansion's heating system was inadequate, to say the least, which meant that winter was the very worst of uninvited guests. Never more so than on a dreary morning as this, when one didn't need to use a thermometer to know how cold it was. The mansion sat in the mountains and was surrounded by dense forest. Winter always arrived here first, before moving to nearby towns. The robotic ring of the telephone reverberated throughout the long hallway. The mansion's furnishings had been so perfectly maintained that it made the place feel unlived. It seemed lonelier than it did splendid. Coupled with a dreary morning, it could have passed for a haunted house. Okay. Her and Alice. She counted more than 30 rings since it first began. The caller either had a lot of free time on their hands or had a good understanding of the house's circumstances. She had a strong hunch that it was the latter. The window above looked out onto a gloomy sky. She hastened to catch the unrelenting ring in the act as soon as possible, though she had a feeling that her happy morning would not come to a close the moment she caught it. It was here that a series of incidents began. Apologies for the lack of romance to this tale. For whether it be objectively true or merely supposition, it is always from gloomy and unassuming beginnings that extraordinary events are set in motion. Dang, Nasu just, literally said, alright, there's not, that much romance here. Chill the fuck out. I know it's from her perspective, or whoever's telling this tale. I don't know specifically if it's her. The mundane always do set forth extraordinary sets of circumstances to begin, you know? Ah, yes, more music. Yeah, gotta get that schoolgirl outfit on. Yeah, Takeuchi! The bass. We love it. Oh, this music is pretty. Such a pretty aesthetic for this game. I love this gloomy gray winter vibe, as well as the melancholic story it feels like. Perfect to record this in winter as well. Oh my god, the art is gorgeous. The reflections and the way it's textured is pretty. Shout out to Hideyuki Fukasawa and Keita Haga. This is a really cool, like, opening set of just that simple going to our destination through Japan. Damn, I'm already starting to get a little bit sentimental. This is beautiful. It's such a pretty song. Ah, look at that beautiful city. As the skies part, as a light comes in. Witch on the Holy Night. I have a feeling this game is going to make me cry like a bitch again. God forbid I do that on... Ugh. God forbid. The rain had subsided somewhat by the time she reached the school gate. Wait, what? Oh, okay. Sunlight seemed to be playing a peekaboo behind the clouds in the distance. It looked like it might be cleared up by early afternoon.
と言っても、私には関係のない話だけど。
The weather reflected her luck. On top of being forced out of the house at such an early hour, she had to suffer through a winter rain. I'm getting a bad feeling about this. The sinking feeling she had only grew as she passed through the entrance and headed inside. She didn't encounter any other students along the way, nor did she see anyone taking part in club activities either. The reception desk to the faculty room simply read "faculty closed." The school had given all of its students the day off, except those explicitly summoned, like her. Oh, that's a big rip, man. The fact that irked her more and more as the minutes passed. Big rip, dude. She opened the door to the faculty room and headed toward the desk she had visited a number of times before. The man at the desk wore a plain shirt and suit that were nonetheless neatly pressed. Slim-framed glasses adorned his face, giving off an amicable yet cunning air. The mild-mannered image of this mid-20s man presented to clashed with a cigarette he smoked. He didn't appear to have noticed her yet.
Yamashiro sensei.
She closed the door with a bang. Showing no response to the sudden sound, Mr. Yamashiro lifted his head.
Yeah, ohayo, Aozaki-kun. Youken wa kiiteiru kana?
He seems like a nice guy.
はい。1時間前に自宅で事前に何の相談もなく。
Oh yeah, we just got a name drop. I don't know if that's her last name or for... I would assume the teacher's calling her by her last name. Aozaki? Having graduated from this high school himself, Mr. Yamashiro was not much older than the rest of the students. For that reason, the students preferred him over the other teachers. Absolutely get that. He always had something interesting to talk about and kept conversations casual. In fact, he seemed more like an older student than a teacher, but she unfortunately didn't share her fellow students' fondness for him. She is of the opinion that teachers should come across as more austere, like an iron fist that can inspire both love and hate in equal measure, not a buddy to joke and pal around with. He was the exact opposite of how she felt a teacher should be. It was only natural that her manner towards him would be forced and unfriendly. Not that she'd ever been wired to make friendly small talk. Yeah, she definitely seems to be a very interesting case. Definitely a very cold... I don't know if I could say cold. Distant, maybe?
今日もご機嫌斜めみたいだね、君。
それは先生の気のせいです。今日だけ特別という話ではありませんから。
The matter-of-fact answer perfectly matched the displeasure displayed on her face. Her bad mood from having to get up early and the tiredness from staying up late must have collectively made her look positively adversial.
そうならいいんだけどね。彼にはそう辛く当たらないでくれよ。僕らじゃ正直どう扱っていいかわからない。
It's the transfer student arc.
先生、その件ですけど、私まだ詳しい話を聞かされていないのですが。
As Mr. Yamashiro met her piercing eyes, he finally understood the reason behind her tone and slowly put out his cigarette.
電話じゃあなんて聞いたの？
転入生の紹介をするとだけです。理由も脈絡もない説明でした。
I keep wanting to call him Mr. Yamashiro, because I feel like I've seen that name a lot. One of Mr. Yamashiro's eyebrows stood up, impressed with the brevity of her answer. You could see that she was angry, not because she had been called to school on her day off, but because she hadn't been told why she was here. Mr. Yamashiro chuckled sympathetically.
先生、これが笑い話ならそろそろ帰っていいでしょうか。
いや、ごめん謝るよ。冗談じゃなくて真面目な話なんだ。
本当に転入生の問題で。
訳ありというか難しいというか。
His parents are dead.
彼、Sojiro君と言うんだけど、ちょっといろいろとずれていてね。
Sojiro.
僕らが案内してあげるより、同世代の君の方が適任だと思ったんだ。
Definitely a bit harder to pronounce. She threw him an unamused look. It was negligent of them to be pushing teaching duties on her, but she did wonder how exactly this transfer student was peculiar. This definitely has the girl meets boy set up, or boy meets girl set up for a story. Maybe he meant the student had behavioral problems or was difficult somehow. But peculiar, she didn't have the slightest idea what that meant, neither do I.
ずれてるなんて、そう使わない表現だけど。
She had her doubts, but swept them aside for now. This wasn't the time to get distracted by more concerns. The fact remained that this conversation was all the peculiar she could handle and she needed more information. She was already beginning to fantasize about saying no and curling up in her warm bed at home.
一つ質問があります。
何？学年は君と同じ2年生だよ。性格は落ち着きがあって人の話をよく聞くタイプ。裏を返せば覇気がないとも取れるけど、それならそれで付き合いやすいだろ。
I swear every like Japanese series that I've seen always has them either be freshmen or second years. I swear to God, I rarely ever see seniors in that.
青崎くんとはクラスは違うけど、きっと仲良くな。
そういったことは本人から直接聞きますし、測ります。
She gives off Rin energy.
そうではなく、なぜ私なんでしょうか。
Though her tone was still stern, it was clear that she was willing to cooperate. She had decided to put her feelings of dissatisfaction aside and focus on the task in hand. Forcing herself to act empathetic in spite of her self-absorbed nature was something she was used to. Paradoxically, this force of will was also the reason teachers put so much faith in her. Oh, that's tough. To a point. At times, that strength shattered expectation, and on those occasions, they were left with no choice but to treat it like a natural disaster and weather it until it passed. That was how Mr. Yamashiro had come to deal with her over the past year.
もう一度だけ聞きます、山城先生。それで、なぜ私なんでしょうか。
Pressured by a question without a clear yes or no answer, he answered.
それはね、別に青崎くんが先生方に敬遠されているのと同じぐらい信頼されていた。学校のためなら教師も生徒も一緒くたに切って捨てる鉄の生徒会長だからじゃないよ。
それ以外にこんな呼びつけを受ける理由はないと思いますけど。
Man, imagine a student council president being cold. Never have seen that before in anything ever. Her eyes did nothing to hide her disbelief as she glared at him. Strength far beyond that of an ordinary 17-year-old girl, coupled with the youthful beauty of one. Mr. Yamashiro let slip a genuine smile, admiring the miraculous balance of qualities.
いや、責務だけでいいなら僕がやってるさ。この人選に関しちゃ教師や生徒会長といった役職も関係ないよ。なんていうか、こんな頼みを損得抜きで聞いてくれるのは君だけだと思ってね。
He just judged that based on her character.
強く推薦したわけ。
In other words, he knew she wouldn't say no.
山城先生。
Is it actually Yamashiro? Because it sounds like she's pronouncing it like that. Yamashiro.
うわ、怖っ。もう睨まない睨まない。言ったろ？僕にはともかく彼には笑顔でって。
Has the student been there this whole time, just listening?
納得してくれたのか。
Okay, good. I was like, what?
移動しよう。もう随分待たせてしまっているからね。
Initially, I thought this guy would be the protagonist. I'm assuming he's the guy with black hair,
それ
right?
と雨の中ご苦労様。帰りはもちろん車で送るよ。
Hey, appreciate that. Mr. Yamashiro stood up gracefully. I'm good, thanks, she replied before turning and walking out of the faculty room. A bit of a prude, that one. He had been waiting for about an hour. While he did, the rain shower lightened into a drizzle. His mind wandered as he listened to the sound of the raindrops. The room was filled with neatly arranged rectangular tables. He was the only one there. Quite some time had passed since he had been brought to this room and asked to wait. Even the best-behaved student might have grown dissatisfied or anxious with the situation by now, but the boy stuck to his spot like a scarecrow. He was chilled to the bone. It was the end of November, and the low temperature in the morning had marked the start of winter. The room was not much warmer. The heater hadn't been turned on. Either he'd missed the teacher telling him to turn it on, or he'd never seen one in his life. He breathed lightly on his freezing fingers as he aimlessly surveyed his surroundings. This dreary place was apparently a meeting room. The other students might have considered it a wonderful place to meet, but to him it was drab and overly spacious. It was a lifeless place that reminded him of an arid cave. Stuck in this cold room with absolutely nothing to do, his mind turned to what they wanted to discuss. Unable to come up with a solid answer, he returned his attention to the sound of the rain. The rain hardly resembled the rain in the mountains, though he could still recognize it, barely. Its smell and sound were harsher, but at the end of the day, rain was still rain. So even this world, alien as it was, could have something in common with the mountains. That trivial detail perked him up a little. Him coming up from the mountains is interesting, considering the beginning of the story. He liked how the town looked soaked in rain. Naturally, he preferred sunny weather, but he liked rain in its own way. The fog from the rain had soaked up the scent of the soil, and it reminded him of home. It was at times like these that he was able to numb the anxiety the city gave him. But then he let out a discouraged sigh. How pathetic. He'd already been here 2 weeks, and thoughts of his hometown still made him sad. Perhaps feeling that he was being unfair to his new life, he composed himself and continued to wait patiently. As if having a passion for distractions, his attention returned to the sound of the rain once more. Waiting like this didn't seem to be particularly hard for him. He quietly endured the numbing cold and the hour alone with calm and deep breaths. As the saying goes, good things come to those who wait. A strong point of his or not, he was astonishingly patient. It was certainly helping him out in this moment. Here they come, here she comes. A fateful encounter. She, on the other hand, was livid. The profile of the transfer student had been explained to her on her way to the meeting room. She was told he had lived his whole life up in the mountains without any electricity. Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, this would be even more foreign world to him than... That's interesting. That meant more than half of civilized society would have been an utter mystery to him.
なんて絶望的な断絶。戦後どころか戦前の話じゃない。ロビンソンにも程がある。
Bro. She had every right to be angry. His village had apparently remained isolated in the mountains for many years. Contact with villages in the foothills of the mountains only occurred once a month or so, which was unfathomable in modern Japan. Really stuck to that original, I don't remember what the name was called, but when they locked down the country and just kept to themselves. Although expressways in Japan Rail, the old national railways, now span the country like arteries, it wasn't entirely impossible for mountain villages like his to exist. But she couldn't imagine how someone born to such circumstances would think or live.
電気がないって村に行き渡っていないだけで
No way.
公衆電話ぐらいはあったんですよね。
なかったそうだよ。こっちに暮らすようになってまず驚いたのが電話だそうだし。
It's also like a boy out of water story or fish out of water, where they don't. Yeah, it's combining a lot of tropes of storytelling together, and I'm enjoying that.
電話って便利ですね。なんて真顔で言われてね。そういえばそうだなぁと再確認させられたぐらいだよ。
I've never seen this done before, though, having a character come into a world that's just modern technology and doesn't know about it. I'm sure it's been done a couple of times. This is definitely my first time seeing it. She shot a sidelong glare his way as he laughed. It seemed that the naivete of the country boy had cheered up Mr. Yamashiro a bit.
駐在もいないってことか。うちも実家は山奥ですから、電気が通っていないのはありえないとは言いませんけど、そいつ学校も知らないんですか？
うん。どんなものかは知っていたそうだけど、実際来るのは今日が初めてらしい。それで緊張していたのかな。あまり会話も弾まなかった。ああいうのも野生児っていうのかな。狼に育てられた狼少年みたいな。いや、探検隊の話だね。
Yeah, I knew she would just be like, bruh.
怖いな、青崎くん。冗談だって。そう、大丈夫。話してみた感じ、おとなしい子だったから。なんていうか、言葉の通じない小動物みたいな感じ。
Can you like stop dehumanizing him? God.
山城先生、その例え気休めになってませんから。
I can agree with that. She gave her a blunt reply. She tried to simulate in her mind what life without electricity would be like, but the thought of it took her sour mood from bad to worse. After all, it was a world she had never known. She couldn't understand why the teachers had given up. She, too, wanted to give up and return to her warm bed, but her good-for-nothing pride was holding her hostage. Not only did the teachers believe she was up to the task, but she also believed she could do it. It wasn't that easy to go back on her word, no matter how bad things looked after the fact. She walked along the hallway, the rain pattering in the background. The meeting room was already in sight. With a furrowed brow, she fixed her long hair in anticipation of meeting the unknown stranger within. Her elegant strides were like those of a confident general going into battle.
いや、青崎くん、君を信頼してる僕だけど、念のため確認しておくよ。なんていうか、優しくね。
作り笑いは苦手です。一応努力しているつもりですが。
ああ、そうなんだ。それはよかった。
I do feel bad for this kid. He's gonna have a rude awakening.
いや、ほんとよかった。青崎くんにも苦手なものってあったんだね。
Yeah, you'd be scary. Way more scary, anyway. Mr. Yamashira's shoulders slumped the second they reached the meeting room. As he put his hand to the door, his eyes seemed to say to her, "Be nice, please." This only made her more irritated.
分かってるわよ。愛想が悪いってのは。でも笑顔なんて意識して作るものじゃないんだし。だいたいそういうインスタントな人付き合いなら飛び丸の方が向いてるって。
I wonder if we'll meet Tobimaru. She sighed about her social shortcomings, but then it occurred to her that being called into school on a day off while sleep-deprived wasn't anything to smile about anyway. She also thought the person responsible for this mess would be better off attending elementary school. Damn! It might not be his fault, but neither was it her duty or obligation to do the teacher's work for them, at the very least. I mean, she's not wrong. They could have used their brains and organized all this on a normal school day, another complaint she wanted to voice later.
いや、というか敵。なんであろうと敵。
Damn.
悪いけど、情状酌量以前に敵。間が悪いのはお互い様っていうか、ほんと、なんでよりにもよってこんな忙しい時に。
Yeah, we still don't know too much about her, but she's apparently extremely busy. I mean, student council, good grades, school, of course, that'll be a lot. Her pounding headache from a lack of sleep had boosted her aggression by 10%. No matter how harmless the guy on the other side of the door may be, anyone who disturbed her sleep was the enemy. And just as she was reaching peak annoyance, Mr. Yamashiro opened the door to the meeting room. The room slowly slid into view. She didn't care for formalities, just looked straight ahead and stormed into the room, and found herself face to face with the most unusual opponent. The wolf. Before we go on, let's see from another perspective. Turning back the clock just a little. You please just show it from his perspective, maybe? You don't have to do anything. For some, these words are a priceless luxury. For others, they are unbearable torture. Yeah. For the proactive girl, it was definitely the former, though she'd be too suspicious of the motives of anyone giving her such a gift to accept it. For the passive boy, it was definitely the latter, a bitter thorn that made him homesick, though at this very moment his mind was still distracted with the wait for his face to reveal any discontent. I like how this story has a lot of third-person exposition as well as perspective. It's not pure exposition, rather. I'm not complaining about that, but I like it. He maintained perfect posture as he stared at the green sky. Green? Yes, green. He had already waited a whole hour, but figured they must have had their reasons for making him wait. As long as he had the sound of the rain to soothe him, he could keep on waiting.
でも、そろそろ9時を過ぎるのか。どうなんだろう。
He had been vaguely keeping track of the time as he listened to the rain. Due to the holiday, the school building was completely silent, except for the patter of the rain on the window. The mood felt as damp as the air. It was then he heard the heavy clatter of footsteps approaching.
よかった。忘れられているかと思った。
I like how soft his voice is, actually. He could hear two sets of footsteps, one heavier set belonging to an adult. He breathed a sigh of relief as the door slid open.
すまないね。随分とお待たせしちゃって。
The first person he saw was a man wearing glasses and an awkward smile. That's Mr. Yamashiro, the one who brought me here.
あれ？里中先生いないんですか？
Wow.
ひどいな。話し相手になってあげてと言ったのに。
Mr. Yamashiro scratched his head, looking increasingly apologetic, and then from behind him, with a tight-lipped expression that made it clear she didn't want to be there, a dark-haired girl with a determined look in her eyes appeared. Oh, the music. I like the strings in this song. Ah, yes, finally we get a clear look of his face. Sojiro gulped. The sound of the rain on the window faded into nothingness. That's when he knew. This is how it felt when time stood still. Man, she is even more, like, different. She's definitely way more, stern than Rin was, and that's saying something. She blinked quickly a few times as if taken back. Why? It was anyone's guess. Maybe he looks a bit more normal than she expected. The boy was everything she expected a naive country boy to look like. However, she felt something she could understand. His eyes widened slightly, as if taken aback. The reason was obvious. Putting his feelings into words was a different matter altogether, so we will never know exactly what he experienced in that moment. That's when it hit him. He sensed he'd been touched by the hands of destiny.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生の静木宗十郎くん。で、こっちの彼女が静木くんの案内役。うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
Aozaki Aoko. His voice and the sound of the rain seemed distant. Oh, I like this framing with that, like, dividing, like that, like a pillar dividing the two. This is how they first met. Such was their start, for better or worse, like the ephemeral beauty of fireworks. It was commonly believed among the students that Aoko was always in a foul mood. But this gossip was 90% prejudice, as Aoko simply didn't have time to be irritated 24/7. The reality was she simply didn't want to explain herself all the time, and therefore she seemed angry about something, obvious or not. This idle gossip did, however, lead to her earning the title of one of the school's 7 deadly threats. The remaining 10% of the gossip was right on the mark. Aoko herself often had the feeling that her tendency to feel animosity towards harmless things was akin to what a chronic headache sufferer might experience. Today fell under that 10%. For today, her anger was pure, and her childish and selfish display was befitting of her actual age. The meeting room was dimly lit, awash in the colors of the rain. To reduce electricity costs, school regulations forbid the use of lights during the day. This was the setting the three of them found themselves in. Her first impression was that his calm demeanor reminded her of a field of wild flowers. In spite of his perfect posture, his overall air felt placid, tame even. And though describing him as meek would be going too far, at the very least he was passive. Even through his uniforms you could see that he was thinner than average. His dark hair was unkempt, and he came across as a wholly forgettable boy. If she had to look at him in a more positive light, she would describe him more a young man than a boy. It was his calm demeanor that made him seem more mature. This is all very fitting to describe him, I would say. Was that the cause of Aoko's reasonless reaction? He seemed almost too at home in the meeting room, and she was left with the impression that it was her and the teacher, not this outsider, who were the guests here. She felt an unidentifiable aggravation building within her, almost as if her right to be here was in question. Aoko felt herself raising her natural defenses.
信じられない。私、今わけもなく怒ってない。
She hated not understanding things, her own emotions in particular. I get that. It pained her less than you would imagine for a perfectionist like her, but it still nagged her like a thorn in her side.
いやーほら青崎くん挨拶してあげなくちゃ。
Mr. Yamashita's attempt to relieve the tension was equally irritating.
挨拶。
After catching a nasty glance in the teacher's direction, Alco turned to face the boy. From an outsider's perspective, it might have looked like a stare down. And in that instant, the culmination of her emotional state hurtled toward the innocent boy and skewered him. How so?
いや、待たせたね、しずきくん。
Hearing his name, Sojiro came to his senses. His stunned gaze shook loose. He took a deep breath to clear his head. Chalking up to nerves, Mr. Yamashiro broke... I think it is actually, like... I think it is Shizuki, not Shizuki. I'm not sure why they translated it like that. So yeah, I'm just gonna... Unless I'm going crazy, I'm just gonna pronounce it how I actually think it should be pronounced. Chalking up to nerves, Mr. Yamashiro broke out a smile and turned to the girl standing beside him.
紹介するよ。彼が転入生の
Damn,
しず
she
き
is
宗次郎く
shooting
ん。
daggers at him.
で、こっちの彼女がしずきくんの案内役。うちの生徒会長で休日を押して新しい仲間の案内役を買って出てくれた青崎青子くんだ。
Having been introduced by Mr. Yamashiro, the girl took a step forward. Her eyes were merciless. Her stare an unspoken threat to violently trample her opponent. Sojiro, on the other hand, managed to keep his own composure, despite the shock and how confrontational she appeared. He had never been greeted quite like this before, but supposed mistakenly that this was how people treated each other in the city. Oh no! That's not okay! Alco, how could you do that? The exchange must have looked quite dramatic to an onlooker. The girl ready to brawl. An earnest country boy desperate to understand. It was a murderous limbo, especially for anyone in the room with them. Like Mr. Yamashiro, for example. While he had thought he had made the right decision in choosing an honor student to help him out, she was in an inexplicably bad mood. The tension in the air was undeniable. It was at this moment that he realized his failure. His realization had come far too late. One false move and this girl for whom no problem was too large would become a storm. Becoming a storm that would rock the very foundations of the school. Just as the almighty Joker card could bring either fortune or disaster, the sole teacher who had been present at the time would come to bear the blame for the scandal that ensued.
いけてる。二人とも気は合うようだね。それじゃあ僕はこの辺でいいかな。
Mr. Yamashiro laughed nervously as he crept towards the door. Yeah, I'm gonna head out.
僕は職員室にいるから終わったら来るように。
I love how fast he just dips. Like he's like, nah, fuck this shit, I'm out.
いいかい、青崎くん。くれぐれも。なんていうか、生徒会長としての度量の広さをこの際僕に信じさせてほしいかな。
You just gotta go get some milk. See ya. Mr. Yamashiro left, leaving the two in a locked-eyed state, one in which one set of eyes was doing all the glaring. All that remained in the room was an artless boy and a cross-armed, guarded girl. Polar opposites, really. The two lingered in silence. They resembled shogi players, agonizing over their first moves. Though it was only Alco who was reading so much into the situation. She decided to put her irritation aside for the time being. With no reason to feel revulsion for him in the first place, she sighed deeply and faced Sojiro.
まあいいわ。山城先生がヒルアンドンなのは今に始まったことじゃないし。それで、あなた名前は？
Her tone was nothing if not reproachful, though he had done nothing to offend her. Her use of Anata definitely has a sign of disrespect for him. But the boy failed to pick up on it. Incapable of such venom himself.
ああ、しずき宗十郎かな。君は青崎さんだったね。
For whatever reason, he came across as happy in his response. That face was good.
柄じゃないから。こっちはしずきくんでいい？
いいって何が？
だから呼び方。くん付けでいいかって聞いてるの。何よ？おかしなこと言った？
いや、すごく。
Yeah, very. The boy replied immediately as if it was a natural response, but quickly second-guessed
いや、いいんだ。
himself.
ごく一般的なんだ。 しずきくんで頼む。君は青崎でいいんだよな。
So I wonder if I should start calling him Shizuki instead of Sojiro.
よろしく。
She followed her blunt reply with a swift turn away from him. She was hardly thrilled at the prospect of the task at hand. It had been entrusted to her, and it was her personal policy to see it through to the end.
悪いけど、優しくしてあげる気はないから。
Yeah, we can tell.
時間も惜しいし、手早く行くわよ。
それは助かる。やっぱり時間は大切だ。
Alco's blunt rancor was lost on him once again. Yeah, of course she would take it the wrong way when he's such an innocent. Like, honestly, I like this guy. Humans tend to be overly conscious about being ignored, whatever form that takes. But despite being peeved at landing none of her attacks, Alco did her best to act professional and directed her guests into the hallway. There was no sunlight in the hallway, nor any sign of life. This was more like a prison than the cave that was the meeting room. As it dawned on Alco that the hallway matched her mood, she sighed once again.
まず聞いておくけど、山城先生から聞いたことは理解してる？
ああ、学校の仕組みについては分かった。この建物全部に同い年の人間がいるなんて、ちょっと想像できないけど。
Yeah, I guess, yeah. He probably was around a lot of older people, if I had to guess.
そう、よかったわね。
Alco rubbed her forehead. This Sojiro kid had no idea what he was in for. Apparently, all he'd ever heard about school was that it was a place where a lot of people met to study. I mean, that's the basis of it, really. High school teachers imparted to students their knowledge in various fields of study while fostering discipline and creativity. But never did Alco imagine that she would have to explain the concept of school itself to someone. Yes, fundamentals were important, but this was absurd. She had serious doubts whether he could even handle classes, but Mr. Yamashiro insisted that things would work out somehow. Sojiro had managed to pass the transfer exam after all. Barely.
ま、私には関係ないけど。
Alco grumbled mentally as she walked down the hallway. She had consoled herself with the fact that today would be the only day she'd spend with this boy out of time, or at least she tried to keep it that way.
青崎、
He asked calmly, trying to get her attention.
何？
こっちも一つ聞いていいかな。
だから何？
She's so blunt.
俺の気のせいだと思うんだが、君はまるで何かを睨んでいるように見える。やはり今朝は悪いものでも。
Oh man, he's astute. Damn. Also, can I just say, I really like his design. I really like how it takes like the middle road of generic like protagonist and fleshed out design. I like the middle road it takes to where he just feels really like an average guy. I really dig that. His gaze revealed earnest concern, as if asking her if she'd remembered to eat breakfast. Oh no. It was like another hammer to her head. Oh my god! It was true that Alco had been glaring at Sojiro the entire time. Glaring red-hot daggers, in fact. Not just at him, but the universe. Even on her best days, her roommate used to remark.
青子の視線は普通の人には厳しいわ。
Fair enough. Also, holy god. Alice, you have a soft voice.
もう少し多くのことに寛大になるべきね。
She'd been warned that her emotions were so naked on her face that people treated her like a powder keg. How naive could the boy be that he could not pick up on this?
私をバカにしてるってわけじゃなさそうよね、この場合。
I felt bad for him. Even she found her own attempts to reassure herself unconvincing. It began to dawn on Alco far too late. That compared to her, this laid-back transfer student might as well have been from another planet.
いいわ。言葉にしないとわからないようだから言うけど。あなたの気のせいじゃなくて、私は視線で遠回しに感情を表現してたの。いちいち声に出すのも、会話にするのも面倒だから。
In response to her words, the Martian clapped his hands together.
なるほど。どうしてそうしたいのかはわからないが、確かにそっちの方が手っ取り早い意思表現だ。
This is a great dynamic. I like how everything he does is gonna tick her off. Sojiro accepted her reasoning without argument. though he still had no idea what kinds of emotions he was trying to express. It was as if he could hear the words but didn't grasp the meaning. Ideas that should have connected were instead separated into blocks.
確かにずれてるわ、こいつ。
Mr. Yamashiro's words made sense to her now. What was odd about this boy went way beyond naivete. A stranger in a strange land he may be, but it was only civilized to forgive him some jet lag-induced confusion.
じゃ、とりあえずあなたの教室に行くから。
Ah yes, thank you Nasu. Base Nasu. For allowing Takeuchi to draw some, what the hell are those called? Tube socks? Long socks? She had regained her composure. Sojiro raised his hands and stopped in his tracks.
あと一つ。
Alko waited for Sojiro to continue. The boy was patient to a fault. She rubbed her forehead with her hand again, nursing a vague feeling of uneasiness.
これもちょっとした疑問なんだが、なんで君は怒ってるんだ？怒るのが商売とか、そういう家柄の人なの？
Dude! Yes, her whole family is just like this. It runs in the family. We got the anger genes. A long silence. Though she knew it wouldn't change the situation, she remembered her regret at answering the phone that morning. He meant no harm. She repeated this thought like a mantra in an attempt to keep her impulses in check.
別にあなたのせいじゃないから気にする必要はないわ。ただ、この一瞬とお昼まで眠っていた場合を計りにかけたら、あまりに利益の違いがあって頭を抱えただけよ。
With that vague answer, she started to walk again and turned her gaze away from this rude stranger named Sojiro Shizuki. While what constitutes normal is certainly up for debate, most would undoubtedly refer to him as so. He was a simple and nice boy with nondescript features. If he were an ice cream flavor, he would be vanilla. And Sojiro found Alko to be very businesslike and full of life. There was a certain purpose to her movements as they began and ended in an orderly fashion. The way her finger raised when she pointed at things. The way she made her way across the hallways and classrooms. The way she would occasionally glance back at him to make sure he was keeping pace. Each and every movement was so impressive that he couldn't take his eyes off her. Alko showed him to his homeroom, class C of the 11th grade. The room certainly displayed more of a human touch than the previous meeting room, but Sojiro was none the wiser as to its function. Alko gave a brief explanation before they visited individual subject classrooms, as well as the gym, cafeteria, locker room, and school infirmary. Sojiro asked so many questions that much time passed before they reached the AV room on the second floor. Oh, I want to see him react to the TVs and stuff. Oh dear. Sojiro stopped looking genuinely Sojiro stopped looking genuinely concerned.
あと20分経つと1時だ。
20 to 1?
え？嘘でしょ？うちの校舎そんな広くないわよ。
Tour had begun around 10, which meant that 3 hours had passed. A tour of a school shouldn't take anywhere near this long.
そうだったわね。行く先々で根掘り葉掘り聞かれちゃ、そりゃ何時間でも経つわ。日が暮れていないのが不思議なくらいね。
Alko glared at Sojiro. She was being sarcastic, of course, knowing full well he would never pick up on it. To her surprise, he looked down apologetically, unable to hide his dejection.
なんだこいつ。ちゃんとしてるっちゃ。
The guy before her now was nothing like earlier. In contrast to seeing his once impenetrable veneer, when they first met, she found herself feeling sympathetic. Momentarily, at least, until her irritation returned to full force.
で、何がまずいの？覚えることが多すぎてパンクした、なんて言わないでね。
いや、それもあるけど、学校のことは別にして、1時になるとまずいんだ。
Sojiro's gaze wandered as if worried about something. If he was worried about the weather, he would have a hard time seeing it, as there was no windows in this hallway.
へえ、時間を気にするってことは用事があるのね。そう。 人の予定を引っかき回しておいて自分だけ好きなようにやろうって言うんだ。なんだ、顔に似合わずいい人ね君。
いや、褒めても何も出ないぞ。
I love how he just cannot pick up on social cues at all. It's by design, but oh my god, Alco is an absolute jerk. I want to say a certain word that starts with a B, but you know, I'm not gonna save that. But damn.
誰も褒めちゃいないわよ。
She yelled at him, unable to hold back her fury.
でそれで一体何の用なの？
The dark hour. Sojiro's face lit up as he finally understood what she was asking him.
そこは秘密にしておきたい。
Oh, it's a secret. The witch on the holy night comes at 1 o'clock. No, it would be at nighttime, so never mind. And her face! That's brilliant! Oh my god.
慣れ始めたつもりだったけど、こいつのこういったテンポに失神しそうになるわ。
Her frustration was natural. Still, she did everything she could to stifle her feelings and fake a smile.
しずきくん、
Oh my god, that is... She took a step forward.
秘密だってば。
Feeling the mood change drastically, Sojiro took a step back. And another. And another. No matter how many steps he took back, she kept edging towards him. She was smiling, but he thought he could see the blood boiling beneath her skin.
これ最後の質問にしとくわね。あなた、私をからかって楽しい？
Bruh! He had no intention of mocking her, though at this point he doubted presenting any evidence to prove this would do much to erase that forced smile on her
わ
face.
かった。説明する。
His arms raised in surrender. She'd halted her advances and freed her face from that unseemly smile.
実は1時からアルバイトがあるんだ。でもここはそういうの禁止なんだろ？
そうだけど、あ、禁止されてるから秘密にしようと思ったの？
Dweeb!
バカね。それなら許可さえ下りていれば問題ないわよ。
Dude, I honestly, like... Shizuki... Like, I vibe with him. Like, of course, I'm not as socially inept or a stranger to concepts like this as him, but... Like, I get his passivity. I understand that sense of being a bit naive to things, to the point where it can come off as, like, mean or rude, to the point where it's like, what? Did I say anything wrong? Did I do something?
知ってる。試験の時に許可をもらってる。
へえ。
Ako's face lit up as she realized he might not be the piece of work she thought him to be. Yet...
しかし許可は一つしかもらえなかった。
一つって、
Damn, this guy's
あなた
an
掛け持ちでバイ
achiever.
トしてるの？
これでも2件減らしたんだ。生活費だけで大変なのに学費まで稼がなくちゃいけない。なのに働き先は一つだけ。
いや、あんまりなのはあなたの方だと思うけど。
Though still irritated, her opinion of him changed a little. She was impressed that he was able to take care of his tuition and living expenses all on his own. She could also empathize with having no time to oneself. Her anger began to subside. The words part-time job were about the last things she ever expected to hear out of this country boy's mouth.
そういうことなら仕方ないわね。
Shogunai wa ne.
いいわ、行きなさいよ。事情は分かったから。
青崎はいいのか？
She had no idea what his question meant, but she at least understood he was trying to be considerate, which also took her by surprise. She figured he'd just be just as dense about people's feelings as he was about everything else.
別に、私もこのまま帰るから。
First, though, she thought it best they both stop by the faculty room. Mr. Yamashiro had mentioned that the transfer procedures had already been completed, so all that remained was for him to sign off on her duties.
先生、案内終わりました。
それは
Her
お疲れ
smile in the
様。
background.
しずきくんもお疲れ様。それで校舎を回った感想はどうかな？
ありがとうございます。なんというか とても学校ですね。
No, that line is so silly.
そうかそうか。うん、明日から頑張りなさい。
She had no interest whatsoever in this pointless wrap-up meeting.
山城先生のことは気にしないでいいわ。教え子に厄介なことを押し付けてふんぞり返っているぐらい職員室が好きなんだから、何時間でも待ってるでしょ。
Yes, same. I mean, my boss at work be like...
いえ、待ってるべきじゃない？
そうか。青崎がいいんならいいんだな。
God, he's such a goober. I love him, his smile. There it was again. Whatever Sojiro was getting at, Aoko had no idea.
それじゃあ行くよ。今日はありがとう。
今日だけよ、今日だけ。
Today only? Damn. She shooed him away with her hand. His face bent into a broad smile, as if he found the gesture endearing. It was a softer expression than she had grown accustomed to seeing out of him. It was the kind of smile that would make anyone smile back. Well, most people at least. Ako Aozaki didn't betray the slightest hint of a smile.
それじゃあまた。
And with that friendly farewell, Sojiro walked toward the end of the hallway. Or so she thought before he turned into the next class over. What? Sojiro headed straight for one of the classroom's windows. Whereupon he opened it with ease. The chilly November air filled the room as the soft sound... What is he doing? As the soft sounds of the rain doubled in volume. In that instant, she realized his intention with opening the window. She really wished she hadn't.
いや、待て待て待て！
He already had one leg out the window when she dashed to stop him.
何するつもりよ、あんたは！
何ってアルバイトに行くんだけど。
Imagine thinking that that's a normal thing to do. That's amazing.
その窓は人が出入りするところじゃないの。だいたいここ何階だと思ってるの？
She saw the light of understanding dawn in his eyes.
死ぬところだった。
Oh my
ここから見
god!
たら危なすぎる。
Dude. Now this is freaking good ass comedy.
危ないのはあんたの頭。
Her insult went right over his head.
あのね、こっちじゃ窓から人は出入りしないの。さっき言っとくべきだったわ。
Imagine if she didn't walk in, just be game over. The story ends.
知ってるよ。時間がないんで慌ててたんだ。ありがとう。これからは気をつける。
Goes to a lower floor, takes a different window. Look, he's such a goober, man. He pulled his leg back inside and closed the window. His school uniform was soaking wet from the rain.
いいけど、私は別に。あなたがどこから外に出ようが関係ないもの。それより、あなた、本当に明日から学校
They're gonna be
に
in the
来る
same
の？
class.
来るよ。不安だけど案内してもらったし。
He bid her farewell before running away down the hallway. She hoped he would walk down the stairs and leave through the school entrance like a normal person.
大丈夫なのか？あんなんで。
The image of him disappearing into the distance popped into her head in spite of her ire. She had no intention of spending any more time with him, and yet she felt strangely anxious. She couldn't tell if the feeling was fueled by concern or irritation. Why had she even gotten angry with this insignificant transfer student in the first place? A strange day with a strange transfer student resulting in strange emotions. Her head tilted as she reflected on what should have been a more enjoyable day than the irritating experience she just had.
いっか。どうせこれっきりなんだし。
The sound of the rain echoed quietly all around her. The gray sky seemed frozen in time. It was impossible to discern whether it was morning or evening. Mr. Yamashiro and Alko were likely the only ones left at school. The unlit classroom looked overly gloomy and ominous as Alko stood in it alone. She pulled up her left sleeve. Her dainty, unremarkable watch showed that it was almost 1 o'clock.
時間合ってる。
It's interesting how he could just tell that the time was like that. She looked out at the window of the grounds below. She saw a boy in uniform running through the rain without an umbrella. A sight she must have seen before, but for whatever reason affected her far more than she wished. You don't want to admit that you care for his well-being, at the very least. Alko did not stop by the faculty room before heading home. While Mr. Yamashiro's offer to drive her home was tempting, she decided it would ultimately be far more satisfying to ruin his day just as he had hers! She walked as quietly as she could toward the entrance and opened her bright red umbrella. She had predicted that morning the rain was waning in the afternoon. At this rate, it would probably cease completely in an hour or so. The distant sunshine would likely have reached her by the time she arrived home.
ま、それも悪くないか。
She shrugged her shoulders in resignation. She neither liked nor disliked rain, but she found herself enjoying her walk home with her red umbrella in hand. The teachers at Misaki High School weren't fond of bright colors, so Alko's red umbrella was an unusual sight. A ghost story about how the umbrella was once pure white had been making the rounds, but it featured Alko instead of a ghost. Oh my god, that's hilarious. It was with that umbrella that she made her way towards Misaki Station. Misaki Private High School took its namesake from the town it was in. The area was once a sprawl of farmland and woodland, but rapid growth of the last 10 years led to unprecedented modernization. There were some who fought to preserve Misaki's natural treasures.
残すことには賛成ですが、それでは残すだけになってしまうでしょう。
With those words, the mayor snuffed out the voices of the minority and ushered in a long-term plan for new urban development. More than enough funds for the urban development were collected, and the unassuming town of Misaki became the largest municipality of Misaki City in merely 10 years. Even though it lacked the modernity of neighboring Yashirogi or the elegance of Misaki Hills.
それも当然よね。どういじくっても、もともとが山中の宿場町だし。
Just wait till the rumbling
山ごと
happens,
切り崩
sis.
すって言うんなら別だ。
I love these shots of the city with the sky. Urbanization had been contained into the lowlands around the station, with most of the hills and mountains still standing as they did 10 years prior. The exhaustion of funds succeeded in protecting the old Misaki, where the citizens could not. It became a truly odd suburban town, welcoming an increasingly urban... Oh, I just realized that's kind of fucked up to speak in this exact sentence that way. Oops. Populations with its vestiges of old country charm. Misaki High School was a private school established long before the town's current state. The original campus, built 50 years ago, was located high up in the mountains, making it its current location its second incarnation. The path to the old grounds was not only steep and remote, it had become an overgrown game trail with the passage of time. For these reasons, among others, Misaki High School had been shuttered until almost 20 years ago, when it received a donation from a department store chain that allowed for the construction of a new campus in the city. And thus, Misaki High School reopened its doors, the old woodland campus forgotten. In fact, most of the students attending Misaki High School were not from Misaki at all. The hardy rustic people of this country town preferred prefectural schools to private ones. Truth be told, Aoka herself was one of them. All she had wanted after junior high was to move to Tokyo, where she hoped to spend her days touring her favorite bands on her way to entering a public university. But her hopes were dashed with her sister's departure, so here she was, walking alone in town, with only a red umbrella to keep her company on what should have been a day off.
思い返してみると、私の人生ってなんか災難続きっぽい。
I'm interested to learn more about her. Her frustration evaporated into the cold December air.
でもま、いっか。退屈だけはしないわけだし。
With those words, her mood brightened a bit as she left to school in her wake. The busier part of town met her at the bottom of the gently sloping road. Misaki's train station was brand new, once looking no prettier than an abandoned factory. It had been renovated into a multi-purpose structure with huge department stores on its east and west sides. When the department stores first opened, Alco and her friends had been impressed with their modern feel, but in time, the stores too became dated. She had no shopping to do today, so she passed them by. What she really wanted to do was rest at a cafe, but she fought the urge, knowing her roommate would never let her hear the end of it if she frittered away her money. Fair enough, actually, I get that. Oh, what the heck? Did we just have a Zawarudo time stop? She looked back and blinked. For just a moment, she could have sworn she had seen someone suspicious in a red dress out of the corner of her eye. Oh, okay. Must have been her imagination. The sixth sense chill was experiencing down her spine was a familiar one at this point. She continued her walk home, brushing off the event as if it had never happened. In time, the chill faded and all that was left was the sounds of the town. She sighed heavily. Had she imagined it? Even if it had all been in her head, she was far from comfortable with the feeling that still lingered.
夏場の蚊ってもう少しこう
I don't think so. Mosquitoes don't. She grumbled under her breath.
波乱万丈、商売繁盛、諸行無常と。そうそう。忙しさに愚痴を言っても始まらないわ。
Fortunately, summer and bugs go hand in hand. She could see how bugs could be drawn to all the sweet fruit. Oh damn, we got elevator music. Dun, 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 That's a lot of stuff in the kitchen, my guy. Dude. I get it's a shared area, but... yeah, that's just... ooh, this music is funky, actually. Lunch rush had come and gone. Oh, this is probably shifted perspectives to Shizuki at work. But one last battle remained, dinner time, only after the evening chaos could the kitchen crew remove their white armor and call it a day. Dude, this is so fucking relatable, holy shit. In the midst of the war zone was a lone newcomer. His voice was uneasy, betraying how new he was.
気持ちはわかる。俺もどうかと思うけど、店長の言うことだから、もう笑顔で乗り越えてくれ。これも商店街の明日のためなんだとよ。
His bright orange coworker clasped his hands together as if to beg for forgiveness as he saddled him with his unreasonable task. Ten years ago, Misaki City was a town of farm and woodland. But everything had changed. The front of the station was now lined with tall, multi-story buildings, and the residential areas were similarly full of apartment complexes. The once rustic scenery around the station had long become a thing of the past. Shiro Inuzuka was the only place in the city that still contained vestiges of the old town. A pocket of the past inside an urban jungle. The road extended up a conspicuously high hill to an old residential district far from the hustle and bustle of the train station. Long ago, it had been considered unwise to build on high ground, so nobody lived above a certain elevation. Shiro Inuzuka, sitting as it did atop a hill in the middle of town, was no exception to that convention and had no residences to speak of. The asphalt continued for some time, eventually giving way to a mountain road that was swallowed into the cover of trees. A lone vending machine stood to mark the boundary between town and beyond. Even the children knew that there was nothing beyond the new playground in development that so enthralled them. Well, that was not entirely true. There was nothing besides the haunted house. I like how it's called that. Aoko Aozaki traversed a long slope. Below her, she could see the whole of Misaki. The symmetrical town looked like a miniature set from this height. It would look like a painting if there had been a sea next to it, but unfortunately, Misaki City was very much landlocked. When it was overcast at the moment, the scene was quite breathtaking on clear evenings. The view was the one thing that made the arduous climb worthwhile, and today she'd been denied even that.
ああ、雨の日は自転車も使えないし、1日に2回ぐらいバスでも通ってくれないもんかな。
Alco had been using this road to get to school for almost 2 years now, but the journey had never gotten easier.
あれ、鍵閉まったまま？アリス、まだ帰ってきてないんだ。
With a weary shrug, she put her hand on the rusty iron fence. Quietly, the heavy gate swung open as if to welcome her home. There sits atop that hill a haunted house. That is how the story much shared around town used to begin. Just enjoying the music. My apologies. Oh my god, this music is like actual eargasm material. But fresh rumors about the house had sprung to life almost as fast as the town's modernization. Despite being dilapidated and abandoned for many years, lights can be seen inside the house at night. An angry murder of crows often gathers atop the hill before mysteriously vanishing. Children get lost in the fog, never to be seen again. Okay, that's one thing. Okay. Late at night, a shrieking sound could be heard all the way to town. This particular piece of slander was the one Alka wished to discredit the most. The final rumor was of an eye-catching luxury car that sometimes made its way up to and down the hill. The rumors spread and grew by the day, and while they grew, the house that everyone thought had rotten away was restored over the recent years. Deep in a wood on top of a hill no one dared to approach. Like a ruin shrouded from view even on the brightest of days, stood a relic out of time, a building from a fairy tale, the house. It was the Kuonji mansion. Everyone in town knew about the witch's house on the hill. The witch's house. It was an unabashedly haunted house where Alko Aozaki resided for reasons unknown only to her. Needless to say, it was not really haunted. The Kuonji family home was a grand western-style mansion with a long and storied history, stretching all the way back to England. It was too small to be a dormitory, yet too big to be called a house. The main building contained as many as 3 normal houses worth of rooms and was surrounded by a large, all-encompassing courtyard. The perimeter of the grounds was surrounded by a high iron fence covered in thorny vines. There was also an annex of the main building. Given such extravagance, it was no wonder that it inspired rumors. To the town residents, the mere existence of such a lavish and out-of-place mansion on top of the hill was a cause for suspicion. Rumors, lies, and slander were the prices to be paid for fame. With only 2 lodgers, it was hard to disagree with the perception that vampires must be living here. Ah, yes.
私はともかく、アリスはそういうのやりかねないし。
Excuse me? Like, I was gonna say, I know Tsukihime has vampires in it, but... Like, are you saying that... Oh, this is cool. Oh, wow, my controller actually could work with this game? I didn't expect that. Okay. It was a grand double door that would have paired well with the brass lock, yet it was secured with little more than a simple keyhole. Pushing it open with one hand, she entered the supposedly haunted house. By the way, if vampires were not enough to scare you, ghosts were known to appear on certain nights. If we're considering Alice to be a vampire, I'm very interested in that. I don't even know how literal to take that. Much like the weather outside, the foyer was overcast with shades of gray. Perhaps by deliberate design, the architect had chosen not to include any lights in the entrance area. Again, the music just absolutely floors me. I adore it. The ceiling was 2 floors high. The only light in the room came from the skylight. The only light in the room came from... Oh, dude, I actually just had brain fog. Like, I literally just, like, forgot that I had read that line. Bro! Am I okay? It is particularly gloomy on rainy days. On moonless nights, it was like the world itself ceased to be. Ako decided the drawing room to the east would be a good place to rest, but knowing that she would not be able to relax until she changed clothes, she started up the stairs. The stairs curled up the wall to the second-floor hall. There was a third-floor attic as well, accessible from the far end of the hall. She had never set foot in there in the 2 years she had lived here, though. Really? The Kuonji mansion was more or less divided into 2 wings, east and west. Alko had been given the entire east wing, but 2 rooms were more than enough as far as she was concerned. She had no desire to open a door that would trap you in a storybook, world or lead to an attic that had only been used for storage the last 5 years. You have a weird personality, Alko. I wonder if the translation of Alko means blue child. I don't think that's it. That's way too literal of a translation. Because I know Ao is part of Aoi, which means blue, and Ko is child. She had elected for a smaller room for no other reasons. Other than that, she thought it would be easier to clean. Yeah, that's actually based. I agree with that. It was furnished with a large bed, her beloved mahogany desk, a wardrobe, and chest for her clothes, and 2 9-shelf bookcases. That was the extent of what she brought from home. Her entire life of 16 years reduced to this. She'd also borrowed the next room down to her for her own purposes.
そうだ。アリスにもらった見張りと壊れてないかチェックしないと。
Watchtower. She needed to see if the project she had been working on all night had borne fruit. The study next door served as proof of the life she had been living for the last year and how different that life was from the one she'd lived before. It was not a room for the person she had been. It was a room for the person she would eventually become, a place of solitude that only she could enter, or so she thought.
うわ、壊れてるどころか跡形もなく消え去ってる。やっぱ自己流アレンジはまだ早かったか。いいわよ。笑いなさいよ、コマドリ。
Oh, there's a bird. The noisy neighbor that intruded upon her sanctuary flew away. While not exceptionally talented, Alko did not lack for effort and was not afraid to fail. One could have almost mistaken her approach for optimism. Dude, that turtleneck sweater is actually really cute. Also, god damn! I like the jeans too. I like how they're like old, so like the torn areas were sewed with pink. Down the stairs, she opened the door to the east wing of the corridor as dark as a cellar. The absence of windows meant it was pitch black without the lights on, so she flicked the switch and entered the nearby doorway. Sanny.
電気のない生活か。想像したくないな。
Same though, that'd be freaking awful. It had been our idea to update the drawing room. The walls were decorated with extravagant patterns, and around the room were large, majestic sofas, and a luxurious Persian rug. Amidst it all was a 30-inch television that seemed completely out of place. Are you sure that's 30 inches? Okay. Oh, it's a lot bigger now. Its perspective is weird. If I stood looking over the other furniture like the emperor with no clothes, the mansion's owner would have rather done without it, but to a commoner like Alko, it was an essential commodity. They had fought over its presence at first, but eventually came to an argument and now mutually enjoyed this modern comfort. This is a lovely room, dude. Imagine relaxing in here.
なんだ、人のことは言えないか。うちも案外時代錯誤な家だった。
Now, in a somewhat pleasant mood, she decided to brew some tea. She boiled some water in the kitchen, prepared a teapot, and made herself some black tea. With a flop, she sank into the sofa. She took a sip of her tea, then another. Lulled by the ticking of the clock, she took a third sip as she pondered how to spend her afternoon. The sofa almost seemed to be inviting her, and she sank even further into its comforting embrace. Oh, okay. Alco blearily opened her eyes as she lifted her body up from the cushions. Is that Alice? Well, she's cute. This is no dream or delusion. At some point, a girl had sat down across from her. Oh, it's not Alice, it's someone... Not the least bit surprised, she reached for her teacup, but the tea within had gone completely cold. Okay, this is getting weird. She asked a question to the girl on the other side of the table. The girl answered without lifting her gaze. Oh, I like the added harmonics to the song. When silent, she could have been mistaken for a beautiful doll. The girl sitting on the opposite sofa was reading an old book. She had delicate limbs and pale white skin. Not a hint of humanity emanated from her melancholic aura. She had darker hair than Alco, and her icy eyes were focused on the pages in front of her. Her clothes resembled that of a nun, but were actually her school uniform. In Alco's humble opinion, the gloominess suited her. She evoked something like out of a painting. There was something unreal about her, as if she were frozen in time. The white of her gently arched neck was so lovely that even Alco found herself enchanted by it. The girl was one of the haunted house's 2 residents. Okay. Her name was... Oh, so it is Alice. She was Alice Kuonji. She was the same age as Alco.
私、どれくらい寝てた
？1時間と少し。ここで眠ると風邪ひくわよ。
Alice answered indifferently, not that it bothered Alco, who was now used to it. She looked at the clock on the wall and saw that it was already 7. She had been asleep for 2 hours. The day had been a rough one for her, and she had slept little the night before, so it was no surprise that she had dozed off for as long as she had.
起こしてくれてもよかったのに、せっかくの紅茶が冷めちゃったじゃない。
私が来た時はもう冷めてたわ。
Damn.
でしょうね。言ってみただけよ。
Alco drank down the rest of the cold tea in one gulp. In the poorly heated Kyonji mansion, that was more than enough to clear her head and wake
こ
up.
うなると、フォートナム&メイソンも何もないわね。おかえり、アリス。玉の贅沢もあんた抜きじゃ閉まらないってことかしら。今日は薬日か天中殺か。ちょっと早いけど、お参りってのも十分ありかもね。
Alco shrugged her shoulders as if resigning herself to her fate.
それで何があったの
2 years together, they knew each other quite well. Alco had one way of asking questions, and Alice had another. Alice asked without raising her head, and Alco gave her the details.
まず謝らなくちゃいけない。昨日徹夜で完成させた例のあれ、意味がなくなっちゃったのよ。ちょっと目を離した隙に沸騰しすぎて壊れちゃったみたい。そうならないよう循環のコードを 2,3 本外したり縫合したりしたんだけど。
Circulation codes. There's this almost like fantastical vibe to the music. It feels like mysterious and otherworldly. Alco tried to laugh it off as if it was someone else's problem.
どういうこと？
Alice is just like, I missed the part where that's my problem.
今朝休養が入って学校に呼び出し受けたの。そこで転入生の世話を押し付けられて一日が無残にも消費されちゃって。
It's weird seeing her without
帰ってきた
anger around her
跡形
face.
もなく怒るアリス。
別に青子の器物破損にいちいち怒っていたら
Oh my
一生分の口論をすることになるでしょ。
damn.
代用品はあるから、それより
Oh
怒ってるのはあなたの方じゃないの？
God, those eyes are peering into my soul. They're as dark as the is her hair. Alice is very much on point today. It was true that despite outward appearances, Alka was seething with frustration. That aside,
この転入生っていうのがひどくずれててね。すごい山奥で暮らしてたらしくて、こっちの常識が通じないんだから。三問以下いって言葉があるけど、あれって本当のことなのね、アリス。
Alice raised her head in response to hearing her name, but Alka kept her going on before she could get a word in edgewise. Alka, after all, expected no sympathy in the first place.
初対面から尺に触るやつだったけど、教室を案内した時なんか失神しそうになったわ。そいつ、教室で教師と1対1で授業を受けるもんだと思ってたらしいの。それはそれでまだ流せる。で、私が簡潔かつ丁寧に教室の何たるかを教えた後で、そいつなんて言ったと思う？それで青崎、他の教室は何に使うんだ？
Oh my god, I love him. I love Shizuki.
ですって。教室に他も何もないでしょ？なんていうか、そいつは少しでも説明を怠るとそのままで納得しちゃうのよ。何も疑問に思わないというか、想像力が欠如してるっていうか、想像することに慣れてないっていうか。まあ一度言ったことはちゃんと分かってるっぽいからバカってわけじゃないんだけど。
あなたが人を批評するのは珍しいわね。そういうダメな人、気にするたちだったの？
Oh, interesting. It's rare to see you so judgmental. Yeah, this whole thing has been a bit interesting with why she's so frustrated. I mean, she couldn't even really put a finger on it herself.
みじんたりとも気にしないわよ。けど明日からどんな間違いをしでかすのかちょっと心配なだけ。
What she was really worried about was having to clean up that mess if and when it happened. That had to be it. If not, it would mean she had no real idea why she could not get him out of his head. Yeah, that it has to be that, you know, there could be nothing else going on.
とにかく変なやつなの。案外アリスと気が合うかも。
Yeah, they would actually, I think so.
三問異解はいい言葉ね。
But from her eyes, it was clear that the question of whether they would get along was irrelevant, given that they would never meet in the first place. Interesting, why though? I mean, I guess why would they meet? Because why would she bring him here? But yeah, Alko gave a non-committal response.
ところでアリス、さっきから何読んでるの？
霊的進化論の二次創作、スピリチュアルダイアリのまがいもの。
Oh, okay.
ああ、スウェーデンボリー。そんなの今更読んでも仕方ないんじゃない？
Is that a Swedish robot? Was that really worth reading again?
新書なら退屈だけど、これは偽書だから。彼の欠点と長所を劇的に褒め上げている。よくできた冒険小説のようよ。立ちはだかる秘密組織の名前がカントとか気が利いているわ。筆跡はあなたのおじいさんのものだけど。
Oh, okay.
へえ、あの人そういう趣味まであったんだ。割とユーモアがあったのね。惜しい人を亡くしたわ。
Alko seemed nostalgic over her now deceased grandfather.
あなたのおじいさん、夏に頼りをくれたけど。
よしてよ、死んだものと考えたいのに。
I mean, the only other time we've heard about a grandfather was the girl at the beginning's grandfather. There's just a lot of pieces, I think, of foreshadowing that's going on that I'm not picking up on yet. The soft cushions caved in under her weight.
話は戻るけど
Alice shot a glance at Alco. Her body, buried in the sofa, remained as still as a corpse. It was clear Alco had tuned out of the conversation. Alice silently chastised her with a look. The more she thought about it, the less important the events of the day seemed to become. If she just ignored Alice, the conversation would end there. They would eventually get up and leave today's mistake unresolved for another day. However, that's not the kind of person Alco Aozaki was.
いいわよ。何？
She asked, still lying down.
今日できなかったのは少し痛いわね
Oh, the project?
だから反省してるって。学校優先は一人前になってから。
Yep, there's the there it is. There it is.
ならいいけど
The coldness in her voice made Alco gnash her teeth. Yeah, that's very harsh. She knew what Alice wanted to say. She knew better than anyone. The veneer she wore for school was different than the way she lived at home. While it could be called hiding in plain sight, Alice thought it was silly. And what the silence told her was...
覚悟を決めろって言いたいのよね、あんたは。
Today's failure was not a colossal one. She just happened to upset the delicate balance between her home and school lives, chasing one at the expense of the other. Welcome to being Spider-Man. And yet that careless mistake was a clear sign of Alco's lack of commitment.
アリスは関係ない。これは私が私で決めなくちゃいけないこと。
She had only known for sure for the last year and a half, but she'd had a hunch for as long as she could remember. Make the choice, and the day will come. It was little wonder that her morals and conscience had been stripped away. Alco pushed herself back up. She was met by Alice's cold beauty and wordless gaze. So I'm confused. Like, I wonder... I mean, it could work either way. Is Alice the girl at the beginning, and was Alco created through the dead kitten, or was it the other way around? Or are they not involved in that?
OK、アリス。来週中に決着をつけよう。それでいいんでしょ？
ええ、青子がいいなら。
Alco could not help but shake her head, feeling like she was hearing something similar for the second time that day. Even in the comfort of her own, she couldn't banish thoughts of that country boy from her mind.
じゃあ下準備はよろしくね。私まだできないし。
場所は例の公園でいい？
妥当な線ね。あ、でももう一軒の方は？そっちの方が急務じゃない？
時と場合、森に変化があれば教えるわ。
After that brief exchange, Alice returned her attention to the book on her lap. Shop talk was over. Now they could return to their normal relationship as roommates. Alco grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Since Alice was busy reading, Alco decided to tune into a variety show that had already started. Oh dang, Alice is surprised. Alice started to speak, but suddenly cut herself off. One of her delicate hands raised to her mouth. She would always cut herself on the second she realized she was about to say something trivial. It's an interesting quirk. Sometimes her self-restraint would hit too late, and she would make a gesture like the one she was making now. It occurred to Alco that the sound her cute little roommate made just now was different than the what? She blurted in times past.
何？
Alco turned down the volume on the TV. Her intense eyes lit up like those of a mischievous cat.
どうということはないんだけど。
ないんだけど？
Oh, she's so cute. Alice looked away bashfully, not knowing if she should bring it up or not. It was times like these that her expression carried a real warmth and surprising charm. If you could see her in this moment, Alice's father would have to admit that her name suited her perfectly. Is Alice the girl from the beginning?
今日帰ってくるときおかしなものを見て、
Girl in
誰
red?
かに話そうと思っていたんだけど。
Alco nodded, beckoning her to continue.
つまらない、本当に意味のないことよ。けど、どう考えてもそんなことをする理由がわからない。青子、人間ぐらいの大きな猫が
What?
ひょこひょこ出前をする理由ってわかる？
That's hilarious. I guess it's like a marketing thing and they dress up in a cat costume. For a second, Alco thought Alice was trying and failing miserably to make a joke again. One would think that about anyone, really. But she seemed completely serious. Even if Alice's sense of humor fell flat for Alco, the story already sounded more fanciful than Alice's usual attempt at jokes. Alco concluded that her roommate was talking about something she'd actually seen.
その話には2つぐらい信じがたい部分があるけど、1つずつ論破していい？
いいの。私もからくりぐらいは思いつくから。ただ理由がわからないから聞いてるの。わざわざ精巧な猫のぬいぐるみを着て出前の天や物を届けに行くことってそんなに簡単かしらね。
難易度以前にそれをやる人間の常識性を疑うけど、
ね。Oh, I just realized. Is that supposed to be Shizuki doing that? Dude, that would be so amazing. Alice nodded tentatively at her words.
まあ、世の中いろいろあるから。私たちみたいなのもいれば、下界から遮断された山奥で暮らしていたやつまで10人十色よ。私だったら見かけたら声かけて理由を尋ねただろうけど。
Alice's gaze drifted at that.
暮れゆく住宅街にさまよう出前猫か。はい。で、今日の夕飯どうする？せっかく話が出たし、私らも天や物にしようか。
Akko loved getting takeout, and her face glowed as she spoke. They had no hard rules for dinner, but if one of them was in the mood to cook, they made a point to make enough for two. The very worst, to spend entire weeks without dinner, but the two of them agreed with that this was the system that worked best for them. Whether they found cooking to be too much effort or simply liked ordering out, nights like this one were a common occurrence, much to the chagrin of the restaurants in Misaki Town. Delivering to the mansion meant coming all the way up to the top of this hill, the source of their disgruntlement.
時間は8時前。ギリギリセーフね。私今月がいいな。あそこの月見そば最近ご無沙汰だったし。
The hungry student council president laid out a stack of takeout menus like she might fan a deck of cards, and excitedly scanned for anything that stood out. Alice casually responded without sparing so much as a glance.
悪いけど、私夕飯済んでるの。
Oh, okay. Eh? Oh, with those words, Alco froze. All deliveries required a minimum of 2 items, so she was out of luck without an accomplice. Cruel society had decided it couldn't be bothered to deliver to a princess who only ordered a single serving of food. Incidentally, to counteract orders from the Hilltop Mansion, the restaurants had declared, the minimum number of orders will be 3 starting next year. Akko and Alice were still in the dark to this fiendish change of direction.
この裏切り者!
Dang! You are a traitor.
だから帰ってくるのが遅かったのね。帰宅部、学校までバス徒歩込みで片道20分のあんたがなんで5時以降に帰ってくんのか考えるべきだったわ。
She actually got a delivery from the cat. Fortunately for Alco, she had been too out of it to even remember that she was the one who had fallen asleep.
ああ、ひどい女。そういう時は残された一人のためにお土産買ってくるのが暗黙の了解だったのに。私だってこの前の外食の時はアリスの分も買ってきたじゃない。
It was unknown how serious Alco was being, but she was visibly angry. She had already woken up hungry that morning, and from the time she was called into school until now, she had consumed nothing but tea. It was a small miracle that her stomach was not growling. She knew it was her own fault, but she persisted, wanting to get revenge on Alice for scolding her earlier.
この前ってあれのこと？あなたが都心に出向いた時、夕食にお寿司を食べてきたのに。それはなぜかコンビニエンスストアのビニール袋だったって話。
The retort, the savagery. Alco had kicked a hornet's nest.
何よ、買ってこないよりはマシでしょ。
真実は時に隠蔽すべきね。
Oh my god! Alice's icy gaze pierced right through her. Alco had certainly crossed the line by going on and on about how the sushi circled around the restaurant while Alice ate her convenience store meal. But new things fascinated her, and she couldn't contain her curiosity towards the conveyor belt sushi shops that started popping up at the time. They were nothing short of miraculous. Even honesty can be a sin, given the right circumstances.
わかった。わかりました。じゃあ今回のは前のと帳消しってことでいいわね。
Alice went back to her book with so much as recognized the question of Rip. The fact that she did not confirm it made Alco anxious.
仕方ない。今日は薬日だし、おとなしく台所に立って料理の腕を磨くとしましょう。
She stood up, announcing her intent to no one in particular.
あ、聞き忘れてた。アリス、どこで夕食済ませたの？
Alice's hand froze on her current page. She suddenly shut the book she was reading and stood up as if at wit's end. She walked across the drawing room with her book in hand. When she'd reached the door, she stopped and turned toward Alco.
聞きたい。
Yeah, that'd be great. I kind of want to know.
まあ、なんとなく。
Alco nodded timidly. Cowed by Alice's sudden vigor, Alice continued in her matter-of-fact way.
その猫が
I knew
余っ
it.
たメニューをくれ
I
る。
knew it. And with that brief response, she left the room. I hit my head out. Oh, hey, I got an achievement. Nice. Nice, that's a good stopping point. Oh, that's a lot of saved. Really? There's 120 save files. I can understand if this were Fate, but seriously? That many? Alright. So that was, wait. No, there are 120 save datas, was I? Just had a stroke for a second there. All I'm saying is this game is based. I'm having a blast with this. The characters are so intriguing. The vibe has this alluring mystery and this anxious atmosphere pictured with the theme of this gray, rainy winter. It just has a perfect aesthetic and mood for the tale it's telling. And it's also full of that Nasu style of how it has such a vague way of framing its big plot points under the surface while also allowing them to build by having enough to make the reader want to keep reading, to the point of having very kooky, wacky characters that are very anime but are expressive enough to where it doesn't feel overdone. It feels just right. And I just have to say, Shizuki is my favorite. He's awesome. And I can't wait to learn more about these characters. And we know that magic exists. We know that a red lady is somewhere who might be the witch on the Holy Night. Who knows? Regardless, though, I had a blast playing this today. If you enjoyed this episode, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. It would mean a lot if you could leave a like. That would really help the algorithm push this video out. God knows the channel's going to need that coming up. And maybe subscribe. You'll find more content. Because I'm actually back to recording now, so y'all are going to be eating good. As well as the fact that I'm just having a good time. I kind of sounded a bit tired near the end of there. My voice isn't used to recording like I used to. My voice, and I don't have any water with me. As I start recording more and more again, my stamina will go back up to where I was able to record a lot longer without my voice committing die. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching. Wherever it is that you are, wherever you are, whether it's day, evening, or night, please be sure to stay safe and take care out there. I'm Hope, and I'll see you next time for Witch on the Holy Night, or Hollow Ataraxia, which will be the next upload. Okay, bye!